Candace, she's been out for quite a while now, and if any of you who have already passed through Sumeru's story quest would already know how enjoyable she is to be around.
私の質問聞こえたかしら?
However, when it comes to using Candace as a character, I feel that she is a character that many of us has been sleeping on. While there are reasons to an extent, because when she was released, she isn't that much of a well sorted out character, as one of the main reasons being not many of the character back then was able to fully utilize her kit. However, now times have changed and we're currently already at patch 5.1, which is a lot later into the future after Candace has been released. And I have to say, Candace personally as a character technically has already had quite a lot of buff ever since then, which is why we have today's video looking into updated Candace build, as well as gameplay recommendations in terms of which teams and characters you will be working phenomenally alongside with, so that you guys are more aware of Candace's potential. Is here and she's an amazing character that we all want to pull. But the god of Hoyoverse decided to bless me with Dia, leaving me devastated. But thanks to Loot Bar, the goddess of Primogems, allowing me to top up at a discounted price, I finally managed to get Zillinon. So if you're planning to swipe for pulling, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 20% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point, you can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. Alright, so first off, let's quickly have a look into Candace Skills Kit once again. For normal attack, technically speaking, if you're using Candace as most of the players would be using, you're probably never going to be touching her normal attack talent. However, if you are really liking Candace and you kind of want to build her as a DPS character, then yes, we can focus a little bit more on normal attack. But do keep in mind though, is that the most important thing when you're playing with a normal attacking Candace is that her NA skill is basically on attack and not HP, in opposed to her other skill, which is her E skill and her burst being skilled with HP. Therefore, she's going to be having technically a slightly different build if you're going with a DPS route. Onto her E skill, what basically you can kind of understand it being similar to how Beidou and Junjin E skill would be working, right? You do have, you know, the tap and hold skill options. Hold skill will generate her one more particles, however, it does have a much longer cooldown, so generally many of the time we're just going to be pressing her tap skill, especially if you don't have a C for Candace. Another thing to note is that Candace's skill is not counted as a shield. While this is not extremely important, however, in some cases where you're using weapons such as, you know, the Vortex Vanquisher on Candace, for some reason you have a spare poem, or you're using Retracing Light, then you technically would need an external shield for Candace to be taking advantage of this buff. But while that's for her skill, however, the most important part of her kit is definitely coming down to her burst. Now, to put it simply, the reason why Candace burst is really nice is that it provides your character a Hydro Infusions, normal attack damage bonus, as well as Hydro application whenever you're switching your character around. But if you are at a C6 Candace, you do have the ability to apply AoE Hydro off field once every around, you know, 2-ish seconds, which makes Candace C6 to be generally quite important for her. Now, her first passive talent basically allow her hold options to have a lot shorter casting time. However, the cooldown is technically still the same unless you are at C4, so if you're still using her hold E skill options, you might be messing up your team rotation here and there, but obviously if you are able to optimize around that, then that is not going to be much of a problem. Now, second passive talent is generally quite important, because whenever your active character is under Candace burst and they do elemental damage with their normal attack, they will also have their damage increase. And so looking at this, if you were to combine the base 20% normal attack damage from her elemental burst, most players should be seeing roughly around 30 to 40% normal attack damage increase for their active character. And obviously if you are investing a lot more HP building into your Candace, this number can go even higher, because generally there isn't a cap here when it comes to Candace's second passive talent, right? So overall, that's going to be Candace Skills Kit. I think it's very easy to understand because, you know, just like many other support character, the majority of the things that she supports your team is going toward her elemental burst. And here in this case, Candace does focus a lot in terms of normal attack increase, which, you know, there is another character that's generally quite similar to Candace, and that is going to be Yunjin. Now you're probably going to be wondering how much of a difference Candace and Yunjin would be, and whether or not you still should be using Candace over Yunjin, or, you know, vice versa. And so just a refresher quickly with Yunjin is that, you know, Yunjin, most importantly overall, she's a Geo character, right? So without even regarding any of the other things that Yunjin would probably be able to do, her elemental type is already kind of like in a disadvantage compared to Candace, because Candace being a Hydro character is a lot more significant when it comes to team building, and especially when Candace has the ability to apply Hydro, her value is definitely going to be there already. Now, some other thing about Yunjin is that she doesn't have access to Geo Infusion. Yunjin does give you normal attack damage bonus as well as potential attack speed increase. However, her normal attack damage increase is either only has a 12-second duration or it's only a 30 hit quota. Now 30 hit is okay, but it is going to be a limit depending on how fast your character is attacking, whereas, you know, with everything that Candace is able to do, her burst duration is at first a 10-second duration if you're at C0, and if you're at a C1 plus, she's having a 13-second burst uptime. So generally that's not too bad compared to a 12-second normal attack increase from Yunjin. So generally overall, I still say that Candace Man of the Time would be better, unless in occasions where you are looking into a Geo resonance, which is where definitely Yunjin is going to be helping your team building right there. Alright, next let's take a look into Candace Constellation, because this is rather a quite important section for her, as with many of the 4-star, you know, having more of their constellation isn't always too hard, and it does actually create quite a difference in them. And so as we've mentioned before, Candace C1 actually allows you to have up to a 13-second burst uptime, therefore not only allows you to have more flexible rotation, but it does result in having your overall team a much higher damage output, because while her burst uptime is a lot longer now. C2 is, you know, kind of nice for her, because now she get an extra 20% HP damage increase, she get an extra 20% HP increase for herself, which of course directly affects how much her second passive talent is able to increase as well, so that's rather nice. C3 is okay, it increases her elemental burst damage, and unless you're, you know, looking into a DPS Candace, it's not really that important. C4 is basically an increase in quality of life, because now her hold E skill has basically the same cooldown as her tapping. C5 is increase her E skill damage increase, so yeah, it's not really that important. And then C6 is basically her most important constellation, and generally something that you kind of want to aim for if you're wanting to use Candace, because pre C6 her Hydro application technically isn't really that good, because you can only get her Hydro application whenever you're switching character, but now Candace can technically apply AoE Hydro off field once every 2.3 seconds if your on field character is weaving in normal attack, which is probably something you're going to be doing anyway if you're having Candace on the team. Now moving on, we're going to be looking into Candace specific build, and as I've mentioned before, Candace does technically has two gameplay style, which is on field and off field support. Now these two playstyle does lead her into building two different sets for herself, which is where we're going to be looking separately in these sections. First off, let's have a look into on-field DPS Candace. Now something to note about on-field DPS Candace is that while she's able to actually dish out damage, it's obviously not going to be that decent compared to, you know, some of the top tier DPS character. Now obviously if you do have her all the way up to C6, it will help her dish out a lot more numbers compared to her without constellations, but overall if you're looking into it, she will have to invest quite a lot into Candace herself, and not only that, her other support team member as well, in order for you to, you know, see a likable damage on Candace DPS. But overall, if you are a Candace enjoyer, then yeah, I'm pretty sure you're just going to enjoy it anyway, because honestly speaking, if you're looking into a C6 Candace DPS damage output as a 4-star character compared to other 4-star, I think she is definitely on the better side. The talent priorities obviously is going to be you focusing your normal attack and then to leveling up her skill and then her elemental burst. Artifacts building is definitely going to be very much similar to how you're going to be building other DPS character. The sand generally is going to be attack percentage is recommended. However, if you already have like for example an attack percentage weapon, which we're going to be discussing later on in the weapon section, then you can opt for an energy recharge sand so that you can easier get her elemental burst up. However, if you are already having her on field, keeping her energy to the maximum isn't really too hard. Goblet is definitely going to be hydro damage bonus, and then yes, circlet is either going to be crit rate or crit damage depending on whichever you are missing. Also, something to note is that Candace will not be able to proc her elemental burst or her C6 damage whenever she is on field, which is kind of sucks. I don't know why they want it that way, so that is why we're not building any of the HP percentage numbers here on a DPS Candace. Onto her weapons, generally Staff of Oma is still going to be her BIS options. The Staff of Oma are just too good, guys. Other than that, we have options like Jade Spear. I think Jade Spear is rather easier to get when it comes to the 5-star options because it is on a standard banner. Some other options, Staff Scarlet, Sands, Engulfing Lightning, Vortex, Vanquishers, Calamity, well, those are really decent statistics that you can actually provide to Candace depending on whichever weapons you have available. For 4-stars options, overall the deathmatch is still going to be the best. Definitely, if you even have a higher refinement for deathmatch, it can even rival some of the lower tier 5-star options out there. Other than that, the catch is also nice, but probably that's going to go to Xiangling most of the time. So you have other options, like the Favonius Lance, Prototype, White Tassel. Those options are pretty much free to play when it comes to building your Candace. Now, another weapon that we had introduced in Fontaine, which is a 4-star weapon, is the Prospector's Drill. Now, I don't think this weapon is very much common. However, if you do have this available, then yeah, you can give this to Candace. Now, looking into specific artifact sets for her, the Nymph's Dream is technically her best in slot options here if your energy requirements are technically met, because overall, just increase your hydro damage really well. Other than that, yeah, you can just use Heart of Death or Gladiator set. That's still pretty much fine. Or, if you're running on a team with Furina, then the Marchose set, I think it is a pretty good choice as well, even for a comparison with the Nymph's Dream, because many of you should already have a lot of Marchose set for farming in that domain quite a lot. Whereas the Nymph's Dream, it's very much a specific artifacts domain that I don't think many of us actually farm for these days especially. So definitely depending on the situation, it's going to be your choice, but we're just leaving some of the options for you out there for you to choose. Moving on, we're going to be looking into her off-field building. Now, talent priority obviously is you only going to be focusing on her elemental burst if you're looking very much into resources efficiency, because other than that, her skill just going to help you do more damage, and you're probably not going to be using her normal attack, so you don't really need that either. However, another very important thing when it comes to off-field building is going to be her energy requirement. Now, Candace only have a 60 energy burst cost, so it's not really that big of a deal compared to character having an 80 burst cost, but overall you're still going to be needing her energy regen to be at least 150% above, and maybe one of the other support character on your team would be running, kind of like a Favonius weapon series in order for you to have a comfortable rotations for Candace off-field. For artifacts building, well, technically you can just slot in a triple HP percentage build and you're fine with it. It's very easy, not too hard. But if you're still feeling that you're lacking energy regen, then I do recommend you to go with an energy recharge sand, because once again, her burst being up, especially for off-field building, is the most important thing. Artifact sets, the Emblem Fate set is definitely going to be the best choice. Not only does it help her meeting her energy requirement a lot easier, but also gives you a little bit more damage whenever you cast a burst. Overall, that's very nice. The Bless Oblige is still fine, guys, if you do want to go with that route, especially when none other support character on your team is already using the Bless Oblige. Yeah, you can go with that set. Another interesting option actually is the Instructor set, because while Candace being, a supporter as well as Hydro Applicator, will be using her in many of the elemental reaction team. So a very nice nice consideration. When it comes to weapon choosing, generally, if you're looking into the best option, then Staff of Homa is still going to be there because, well, this thing, not only does it provides you really good crit ratio, but also gives you more HP percentage, which is something that Candace loves. So, well, there you go. Now, if you're really much looking into weapons that are enhancing her HP, then Rightful Rewards, the Fontaine craftable options, was actually a very nice addition to the free-to-play weapon crafting for Candace, as not only does it give you a lot of HP for Candace, but also alleviates Candace energy regen problem because it does help her quite a bit with that. The Black Tassel, yeah, overall absolutely free-to-play options if you also have that, very nice HP increase. Other than that, weapon with energy regen, you know, like Scout Spine, the Favonius weapon series is also very good for her, so you can go with those kind of weapons as well. So guys, those should technically be basically everything about specific build for your Candace. Now we're going to be moving on to some of the most interesting parts of every character build, is looking into the team building. First off, we're going to be discussing some of the character updates that Candace has been working phenomenally well with after so many patch has gone through, so that we're basically looking into the latest information here. Now overall, as we've known, Candace is the character that focuses a lot on normal attack buffing. Hydro Infusion is one thing, but not many of the time do we use this Hydro Infusion, apart from some of the rare team building cases, which we're going to be discussing in a little bit. But other than that, her Hydro Infusion is not needed whenever she's being a support on the team, because if you're having her on a very good DPS character team, most likely the elemental damage being done is not going to be overridable. But other than that, when it comes to DPS character that appreciate having their normal attack increase, Candace can technically has a fit, especially some of the recent character introduction, largely being that going to be Alekino. And up until now, Alekino is one of the characters that has the most fitting toward Candace, and it's mainly one of the reasons why Candace's popularity has shot up quite a lot. Now, one of the main things is that when it comes to Hydro support, getting a lot of buff for your team, that character generally is going to be Furina. Many of the time, if you look into it, in all honesty, Furina generally is going to be a direct increase compared to Candace, and you're only going to be using Candace whenever you're having a normal attack team building and you're having Furina being used in another team without having her available. However, in specifically Alekino team, do note that Candace being used here in most of the situation does require her to be on a C6 level, especially if you want her Hydro application, which is very much a downside. But if you do have a C6, especially on an Alekino team, not only does she help a lot with Hydro applications, and the internal cooldown really do very much coincide with Alekino, helping her to basically vaporize every of the hit that she's able to vaporize. And furthermore, it does help Alekino to do a lot higher normal attack from Candace buffing, which is a lot easier when you have Furina on Alekino team, because we already know how fast Furina can sap out your team's HP, leading to many of the Alekino's deaths. And now I know that on the showcase here, I don't have specifically Alekino, and it's actually Hu Tao, because on the account that I have Alekino, I don't actually have a C6 Candace to showcase. But if you're seeing Hu Tao here, I generally say that Alekino and Hu Tao is pretty much similar in terms of how they use Candace, so hopefully you guys can see the representation here. Other than that, after Alekino release, Claran is another character that pretty much use a lot of her normal attack. And while again, obviously, since Furina can also be on this team, but that also can be Candace as well. Now, many of the time I do just actually have both Candace and Furina run here if you have room spare for Claran. And then while obviously with the introduction of Zillinden, you can have, you know, Zillinden with a lot of buffing here to help with your team overall Claran. And I think overall this is one of the better Claran team out there because of all the buffing that Claran actually has, and that obviously including Candace in that team as well, which again is one of the reasons why her popularity has been shooting up. Other than that, you know, interestingly, Mulani as a character can also make use of Candace. Now obviously not the best team, because once again, yeah, Furina can also be there, but again, if you really want to make use of it and you already have a C6 Candace, then yes, Candace can very much work really well on Mulani's team, and you can pretty much see quite a nice difference in terms of Mulani Shark Bite, because again, Candace normal attack buffing is really good. So alongside with Xiangling and Zillinden being on Mulani team, overall that's going going to be very nice vaporize damage for Mulanni right there. So those are going to be some of the newer team comps that Candace is going to be supporting in. Obviously, we have a lot of other normal attacking character that Candace can be on. Obviously, I can't really go through all of them here, but if you really want to slot into them, you obviously can find a way to make use of Candace being there. Now, obviously, we can't go without talking about DPS team for Candace, because yes, I'm pretty sure many of you have been looking forward to that as well if you're having an on-field DPS Candace team. Now, since we know that Zillion is the newest character introduction and Candace is also on the Zillion team, if you're building a DPS Candace, you can technically also build a team such as Zillion, Farina, and Xiangling on Candace. Or if you want to have an easier time, you're not caring too much about rotation and stuff, then you can go with a mono hydro team, swapping out Xiangling with the Yelan. Yelan is also very good because she also has access to really good damage buffing for your Candace as well. Another very fun and interesting team that you guys can try out if you do have a Xian Yun on your account, then plunging Candace running alongside with Bennett and Xiangling doing vaporize damage is actually looking pretty nice. As you can see here on the showcase, Candace really do nice numbers when we're looking into her being a 4-star. But then once again, I do mention that she does require you to have a lot of investment, so that's something that you guys have to keep in mind, right? And then the old school team, like reverse vaporize, for example, Candace, Xiangling, Xingqiu, and Bennett, very free to play friendly team that you can play around with. I say free to play friendly, but it is costing you a lot of investment because that's basically an international team for you right there. Electro Charge team, if you want to go with it, Candace, Farina, Zillion, and Official as a off-field sub DPS, or Yai Miko, if you still want to have that, then yeah, that's a very nice updated Electro Charge team for Candace to play around with. Candace can also be on a Nilu Bloom team, specifically from the fact that she has access to giving you Hydro Infusion. So if you're having character like an on-field Nilu or an on-field Dendro MC or even Yao Yao, then they can actually take very much advantage of Hydro Infusion to apply Hydro while they're having Dendro application off field for creating a lot more Dendro cores, and that is really nice. Hyper Bloom team is a team that Candace can also be in, for example, running Candace, Nahida, Kuki, and Dendro MC, with Candace being the on-field driver for you, so that obviously she's going to be applying a lot of Hydro for your Nahida and Dendro MC to create Bloom cores, and then Kuki Shinobu is going to be the character that triggers the Hyper Bloom. Other than that, Bersian is not very much a team that we sort out a lot, but if you're still interested in that, then Ayato, Candace, Nahida, and Toma Bersian teams, you can find a very nice combination in that. So overall, as I've mentioned, Candace has got quite a lot of, I would say, direct buff towards the character that has been released in some of the previous patches. Overall, her kit is very fun because she does fills in kind of some of the gap that we don't have on other characters. Obviously, she does have her own downside because many of the time, other Hydro character can just overshadow her, like Farina and sometimes Xingqiu and Yelan as well. And especially from the fact that Candace does requires you to have a C6 to unlock her fullest potential and be used in many of the team comps out there. But the things that she has over from Yelan and Xingqiu is that she has access to AoE Hydro applications at C6. So even though Xingqiu and Yelan overall will still always going to be better Hydro sub DPS character, especially in terms of damage output, but whenever we comes into situations where you are in group and you want to have very nice AoE Hydro applications, then Candace is going to be the character for you. And especially character like Alakina would appreciate that because many of the time her attack does result in a bit of AoE, so if she's able to vaporize a lot of the hit in short duration of time, overall that's still going to be good. Those guys are going to be everything I have towards an updated build for Candace at this point in time. I hope that it has been a very helpful video for you to have a refresher of Candace as well as many of the updated information on her. If you do have any questions, leave it down in the comment section and I or some other lovely Genshin player will get to you there. If you're new to the channel, guys, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on my future Genshin Impact videos. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me to this part of the video, guys. With that, I wish you a super day and I'll catch you on my next video.